Hi everyone, it's Melissa.
And Desiree.
Welcome to another episode of Teen Gen Talks, where the goal is to empower the youth of Glendale and connect youth to community resources, individuals, and organizations through interviews and discussions.
Today's special guest is Oriana Peñaranda. She is the founder of Xolo Books, an online bookstore that is dedicated to promoting stories written by Black, Indigenous, and people of color. She is a proud Latina passionate about decolonized learning and finding a balance between activism and rest. When she's not reading, Oriana is often out with her dog or is enjoying a delicious meal.
But before we get started, don't forget to follow us on our socials on Facebook and Instagram at MyGlendaleLAC. Don't forget to follow us on Spotify or Apple, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Also, make sure to give us a like and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Glendale Library Arts and Culture, where we post the full episodes every Friday at 4:30 p.m. Thank you, Oriana, for taking the time of your day to talk with us. We have a lot to discuss.
No, thank you so much, Melissa, for inviting me, and I'm extremely excited to be here.
Awesome. So before we get into talking about Xolo Books, I want to start off with talking about your love for books. When did this love blossom?
Oh, my love for books blossomed at a very young age. My parents say that I picked it up from my grandmother. My grandmother was a teacher and elementary school principal, and I think she was always giving me like books to read, and I was like super happy with them, and they brought me a lot of joy. They still do. And so as a kid, it really, I wish I could say like, oh, it started at this age, but I think it's truly like from beginning. Like some people like to joke that I was born with like a book in my hand, because you would see me just reading all the time. Like I was so much more interested in like reading my book than like doing other things or yeah, just reading is just like my one true love.
So when you were young, did you feel represented in books that you were reading, or was it something that you later saw?
I would say that I probably saw more accurate like representation to my identity as a Latina, as an immigrant later on in life. I would say that maybe as a kid, I still related to certain characters, but it wasn't quite that one-to-one connection. The characters didn't necessarily look like me, but I would say maybe we shared similar feelings. And so I could still relate and enjoy stories, but it just still wasn't quite there. It wasn't until I was much older that I started seeing a lot of books written by and for Latinas or any Latinx authors. And so that has been really awesome to start seeing how in the book world, we've become more inviting of diversity in stories. And I know it's still really nice whenever I see a character that looks like me, that talks like me, that has a similar background to me. And it gets me so excited. And so I really like it when I see that type of diversity, not just like not just within Latinx stories, but all throughout, be it Black, Asian American, all of it. It makes me very excited to see that that's catching on a lot more and that we're pushing for it more.
And speaking about wanting more books to have representation, that is what you do at Xolo Books. So how did Xolo Books come to be?
Yeah, so Xolo Books is an online bookstore dedicated to intersectional and anti-colonialist stories. And so those are two really big words to say that we really like to promote diversity in experiences that are accurate and complex in the many identities that we all share, right? Because we're all very complex humans. We identify as so many different things, and the way that they relate to each other is so beautiful. So we loved seeing those authors and those stories in our bookstores and promoting it. And Xolo Books started a little over a year ago. This was kind of my salvation for a lot of different reasons, because, about a year ago we still are in a pandemic, but we were really still at the very beginnings of a pandemic. And I was in a very, very bad place, mental health wise. I think the world was changing in a very, very intense way. I was changing, and I realized that the current job that I had, this career path that I had set out for myself was not bringing me the joy that I had thought it would. And I kind of had this idea, you know, of what are the things that truly bring me joy. And we, you know, in the way that you've asked me, like, where did that joy for books start? I immediately went back to that place as a child, like reading in a corner somewhere and just being the happiest human being in the world. And so I was like, let me see if I can just figure out how to open up a bookstore. But I wanted to go back to that love of books, but I also knew that I'm like, this is a world that I think really needs to see these complex stories that are just not as prominent. They're not as like out there as you would think, like some big name authors and stuff like that. It's just not as well known. And so I really wanted Xolo Books to have this specific intention and mission behind that, seeing that representation and promoting everyone's stories, because we're not the minority. We're so much more. We're the majority, and we're loud and proud, and we're excited. And I love promoting those stories.
How does Xolo Books analyze the books that you put on your website?
Yeah, so great question. So we do a lot of extensive research looking into the different authors, genres, the identities that they're promoting. And we also like to check in with other booksellers. We also like to reach out to, honestly, people in our community and who have these different identities and say, hey, I read this book and I remember how much it meant to me to see myself represented. I think this would be a great book for your store. Like we do our own background research to like always make sure that like we're checking all the right boxes. Mm-hmm. But we also really do welcome like a lot of crowdsourced recommendations because no one is gonna know how best to tell your story than yourself. So we really take all these recommendations to heart whenever anyone is like, oh my God, this book right here really just made me feel so validated in myself and who I am and who I want to be. This would be a great book for your store. So it's a big combination of a lot of different things like that.
And I love the story behind the name Xolo Books. So if you could talk more about how the name came to be.
Yeah. So for those who aren't familiar, so the Xolo is short for the word Xolo Itzcuintli. So the Xolo Itzcuintli is a breed of dog. It's also known as the Mexican hairless dog. It's very well known in Mexico because it's like the national dog of Mexico, and there's a lot of like relationship there, but most people did not know. And honestly, I didn't know at the beginning either until I adopted my dog, Kira, who is a Xolo. And years ago, because I adopted Kira a couple years before I opened up Xolo Books, and I looked into her breed because I'm trying to get to know her. You know, she's a shelter dog, and I'm like, how do I best, you know, how do I make sure that I'm doing what I need to do for you? And so in my research of learning about the Xolo, I learned that not only is this dog an incredibly old breed that goes back all the way from the times of like the Aztecs and the Mayas, but they come with this really profound story that the breed, the Aztecs and the Mayans believed that it was a spirit guide, and that its role was to guide people who would die at the time into the afterlife, right? It was kind of like your little doggy companion that was like, okay, it's time to move on and, you know, have your soul like rest. And so that to me was like a very beautiful story. And then I also learned that at the time, the conquistadores learned about like the myth behind this dog and tried to eradicate the breed because at the time they were, you know, pushing forth like Catholicism, Roman Catholicism. And so they were like, we can't have this dog exist because people think that it's a spiritual guide and, you know, it's Jesus Christ or nothing. And so they tried to eradicate it. But here we are today. I have my little Xolo like outside the door, and it's survived so much of that. Like so to me, not only is it like this metaphor of like guiding people, but it's also this metaphor of resilience. And against all odds in this world, that really try to push forth a specific way of being that is tied to like, Eurocentric beliefs, we still survive today. And to me, that's very representative of a lot of the communities that we like to highlight in Xolo Books, that no matter how hard other people will try to say that we don't matter, that we shouldn't exist, yet all those things, we still every single day show up and we are worthy of that, existence.
So Xolo Books also donates a percentage to local nonprofits. How did you choose the nonprofits that you donate to?
Yeah, it's actually a really hard decision because I'm always like, I just want to give money to everyone. But we also like to do a lot of research behind the nonprofits that we work with. If it's a specific month, so let's say, like, for example, it's Latinx Heritage Month. So for this month, we are working with the Alianza Nacional de Campesinas. So it's, I guess in English, it would translate to the National Alliance of Female Farm Workers. Yeah, that's right. And so kind of aligning with the mission of Latinx Heritage Month, and female farm workers form such an important role in our society of making sure that our food gets to our supermarkets and that we get fed. And so this nonprofit specifically works on leadership opportunities for these women, so they can advocate for themselves to, have higher wages or better working conditions. And so we like to see which groups we can work with that align with maybe like a specific theme that we're working with that month. And it's similar to the book recommendations. We also take a lot of suggestions from our community of saying, hey, I've worked with this nonprofit before. They do fantastic work in this specific field. And it would be great to partner with them for the month. And so it's we do a little bit of those recommendations as well.
And what have you learned throughout this whole process of starting your own business?
I have learned so much because, for one thing, I was not necessarily raised with like the business owner mindset, if that makes sense. I, like many child of immigrants and an immigrant myself, I sought a very traditional path for myself, because there's a sense of comfort that we seek as immigrants, right? We want stability. We came from a beginning that was very chaotic, unstable, unknown. And so we really need that sense of stability. And so I sought out a very traditional path, and then I realized that it wasn't meant for me. And, I don't want to say that that's what everyone should do, but it just didn't work for me. And so I had to learn that it's okay to say, this doesn't work for me. And trying to force something to work for yourself is going to cause you a lot of like struggle, and internal strife. And that it's fine to say like, hey, I thought this was for me. And it turns out it isn't. And there might be something else out there that is for me. And I want to go look for it. And that there's so much power to knowing and finding out what works for you. And I hope that not just like, anyone, like I do hope that everyone can kind of realize that we have so much power within ourselves to go seek our happiness and our joy. And it just so happens that my joy, my happiness manifested in this bookstore, in this small business. But I think anyone's joy and happiness can manifest in so many different ways. And so that's probably like the main lesson to me out of all of this, is that really, really do just like your body, your mind, body, and soul tells you what brings you joy and what doesn't. And so just gotta like, sit down with yourself and think, did that bring me joy? Did it not? Maybe I need to do this for this moment, but maybe I don't have to do it forever. And having those conversations, because I think that is very liberating for ourselves. And so I definitely invite others to kind of ask those questions of like, does this bring me joy? And if it doesn't, can I do something about that?
So how do you promote your online bookstore?
We promote Xolo Books in a lot of different ways. We do a lot of social media posts. We have a solid presence on TikTok as well as Instagram. We also like to promote ourselves during in-person vendor markets here in the greater Washington, D.C. area, especially because we don't currently have a physical location. Because of the pandemic, right now, it just still doesn't seem like quite like, there's just too many variables in having a physical location, and working online has given us the opportunity to have a reach all over the country. So, but we do like to meet people in person, and we really much do like having that one-on-one interaction and getting to know people and learning about their interests and preferences in reading and books. And so we also really like attending these markets because there is something special about in-person interactions, and we don't want to miss out on that as well. But virtual interactions are still very valid as well, and I think have really saved a lot of businesses as well during the pandemic.
And what is something you hope people will think or say when they come across Xolo Books?
I guess one of my overall goals with Xolo Books is that when someone sees the name or our logo, they will have trust in our recommendations and what we're promoting. Definitely one of my goals is that maybe you all have seen like the little stickers that say like Oprah's book club pick or like Reese's book club pick. It's definitely a dream of mine to have one for Xolo Books where people will say, oh, I know, I see that logo, I see that sticker, and recognize that this book comes with a gold standard approval of recommendation, that it is a book that is representing a community or a person in a way that's very powerful, very positive. And that's definitely something that I hope to see others connect when it comes to the store.
Where do you want to take Xolo Books in the future?
Well, I definitely would like to take Xolo Books into having a physical store. I still with COVID, it's a little wishy-washy, but hopefully this won't go on forever. Fingers crossed. And we would have a physical location that also doubles as event space, because we're big believers in community building. We love the idea of working with grassroots movements. There's something very powerful in just providing space for people to meet and come together to discuss or help or organize, or for students to do their group projects. That's just, we want to create a space that's very inviting for anyone to just come and go look at a book or go meet with a friend and just be and exist in the way that they want to. So that's a huge goal of ours.
And for you, having your own online bookstore and being a businesswoman and being Latina, what does all of this mean to you?
That is a great question. I guess it means a lot of things. That I now consider myself like a Latina entrepreneur. But I think at the root of that, it means that I get to choose what I take on. Being a businesswoman or owning a business in general is very difficult. There's a lot that goes in it, but I choose to do all of that, if that makes sense. I choose to have the problems that I do, but I also choose to have the joys that come with it. It's my choice, and it gives me a lot of independence and autonomy, which is something that I was very much struggling with in my previous world, is that I didn't feel like I had any choice in what I was doing or what I was saying. And that really just impacted me in a way that in the moment, I honestly didn't even realize it was impacting me that badly. It wasn't until I took myself out of that situation and reflected back and said, wow, okay, no, I see where my sadness, my anxiety was coming from. It's because I didn't have choice. And so being a Latina entrepreneur has given me the privilege of choice. And that is something that I'm grateful for every single day, because I wake up thinking about the bookstore and all the things that I want to do that day, and it's exciting. yeah, sometimes it can be overwhelming. Sometimes I do things that I don't want to, like taxes. I don't like taxes, but at least like doing taxes is part of like the bigger picture of what I do want to do. And so I'm like, okay, if I have to do taxes, at least I'm glad it's for this, right?
Yeah.
So before we end, we have some rapid fire questions. The first question is, what is your favorite color?
What is my favorite color? I don't have one actually. I equal opportunity color for all of them. I like a rainbow.
What is some advice that you wish you would have known when you were younger?
That your worth is not tied to what you can produce or what you can do for others or for society. Your worth is internal to yourself, and you decide what that is.
Describe yourself as a teenager in 3 words.
Tall, angsty, and always hungry.
If you could have any superpower, what superpower would you have?
I've always liked the ability of flight. I like the ability to just be able to up and go. I don't care if people see me just like up and like flying all over the place. Like I got things to do. And I need to get there. I like the idea of flying.
What is your current favorite song?
My current favorite song. I don't know if I can pick one song, but lately I've been really enjoying this band called Bomba Estero. They're a Colombian group, and they're all female, and they're so, I don't know, they have a lot of like active, happy music. And it's also very like female empowering. They also sing in Spanglish, which is also something that I very much enjoy. The ability to sing like just like between English and Spanish is a skill like no other in my brain. So definitely any of those songs right now, like I will happily enjoy.
What is a book that you have recently read or are currently reading that you would recommend?
So the book that I'm currently reading is called Free Food for Millionaires by Min-Jin Lee. And she's a fantastic Korean American author. She also wrote Pachinko. And not only did I really, really love Pachinko, and I'm like halfway through Free Food for Millionaires, but like this book is so awesome in that it's very like gossipy too, which is like different from what I'm like used to reading. But it's very much, it's like, it follows the story of like a bunch of different like families and upscale families in Manhattan, and like who's sleeping with who, and like, who's like, not getting an extra bonus this year from their bank, who's like gambling their money away. And it's all like all that chisme. And I'm like, oh, I love it.
Well, thank you so much, Oriana. We learned a lot about you. Thank you for taking your time out of your day to sit down and talk with us. Can you let everyone at home know about any upcoming projects and where they could connect with you?
Yeah, so we at Xolo Books are continuing to celebrate Latinx Heritage Month. And so right now we're really focusing on Latinx graphic novels, which is something different that we're doing here on the store. Instead of promoting like your traditional book, we thought, why not graphic novels? There's actually a lot of great Latinx authors out there that we are promoting throughout the month of Latinx Heritage Month. So definitely stay tuned and check out on that. And you can do that by following us on Instagram, TikTok. We're at Xolo Books on just about every single social media account. And yeah, well, it was an absolute pleasure to talk with you two, and I've really enjoyed this time. And thank you for asking me such wonderful questions. They were incredibly thoughtful, and I loved answering all of them.
Well, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for this too. And yeah, thank you for doing this. It means a lot.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
no, it was fun. It was really fun. Like truly, those questions were very awesome.